do some grassroots effort stuff. I don't see why that's important at all in this video that you need to know. I'm at my office at work. I had to come in on a Sunday to get some work done, and that's okay. It keeps me on my toes. I have a reminder here to be silly sometimes, and that's always good. I want to update you guys on my yearly goal of my comedy album. Keeping goals is tough, okay? I've set some weekly goals and I've managed to accomplish some of them, but what I realize now is I have to set reminders in my phone to actually sit down for 20 minutes and review them and make sure that I'm on track. The good news is I was able to book a couple of shows in April and May, so that's always good, and my monthly comedy show in Santa Monica was a big hit this Thursday, April 5th. And you know what's interesting, when my dad calls me and like he leaves a message, my dad's a very distinct person. His name's Israel, he was from Israel. He's just foreign, do you know what I mean? Like, I know it's him, but every time he calls me, he's like, Alex, it's your father. No shit, do you know what I mean? I did want to talk about one thing, because I am at work, and it's how do we define ourselves? And that was the one thing I wanted to talk about in this video, because I was having a conversation with somebody I met yesterday. It was a husband of my wife's friend, if that connection makes sense. Basically, I asked him what he did, and it took him a while to explain, because we were joking about how Uber drivers are all rappers for some reason, and I think he told me that he was a rapper, but I didn't know if he was being serious. But he started to explain what he did, and it was a little convoluted, but he is kind of a money manager. Him and a business partner invest their money in a portfolio just between the two of them. But what was really cool is that they actually buy physical businesses like UPS stores, or they recently just bought a bar to help fund that portfolio. And I thought that was really interesting, because we have a really hard time defining who we are. Who am I? I thought the conversation with him was really cool, because he's basically an entrepreneur, which I've always admired. I just thought it was interesting that he had a hard time identifying who he was and what he does, because I still think he really wants to still be a rapper. I'm still not 100% sure. Maybe next time I meet him, he'll be able to elaborate a little bit on that. It reminded me of a story I had with somebody when she was a psychotherapist, and she always said that she wanted to be a musician, and I had at that time started to identify myself as a comedian, because I had been doing comedy for several years now and trying to take that part of me a little more seriously. And she said, oh, that's really great, I want to identify myself as a musician, but really I'm a psychoanalyst or a psychotherapist. And I was like, oh really, so what have you done music-wise? And she's like, well, I've released 2, maybe 3 albums, and I have a few singles that I'm working on right now. And I go, that's a musician. You should identify yourself as a musician that happens to have a day job doing psychotherapy. And I think that's okay, but it's all about framing who you are and how you want to represent yourself to the world. And I'm only bringing this up because I'm in my office on a Sunday and I wish I could be with my family or working on my comedy. But the truth is that I get to do this video, so I'm keeping that momentum going, and I get to see this reminder and a few other reminders around my office that are important to me to keep me in check, because I find it very often that we identify who we are with what we do. It's a very North American sort of way of identity, meeting somebody and saying, oh, what do you do? And my brother once told me that Europeans don't actually greet themselves like that. They say, what are your hobbies? You know, tell me what you do outside of work that keeps you busy. So when you say something to an American and you say, oh, what do? You say, oh, I'm a banker, or I'm a comedian, or I'm somebody who works in marketing, or I'm a rapper. Or in Europe, they'll actually say something like, oh, I go horseback riding, or I write poetry, or I'm writing a book. And they define themselves by the activities outside of their work. And I think that was just a very useful tip for me. And so basically when I try to meet somebody, if I want to know what they do for work, I'll say, oh, what do you do for work? But if I want to get to know them, what I try to say is, what keeps you busy during the day? And sometimes I even just add the caveat, what keeps you busy during the day outside of work? And that'll help sort of focus the conversation to let them know that you're interested in finding out what they do outside of the office. Anyway, that was just my little tip for today, and it's just a good reminder for myself to still be me, Alex, the person outside of my office. One of the things I enjoyed talking to with this guy who is an entrepreneur slash rapper is that we both are fathers. His son is about 15 or 16 months old, mine's 13 months, and we're still trying to work out what our identity is outside of being a father or a husband. And for him, maybe it is the great next white rapper, and for me, maybe it's just somebody who gets to do a comedy album. I gotta get out of this office and go home, and see you next week.